The Constitutional Court on Thursday ordered the current military service law to be revised, as the law does not give conscientious objectors an option to perform alternative military service. The court said it's constitutional to punish those who refuse to perform military service under the current law, but the lack of alternative military service measures is against the Constitution. It also said a new system to allow for alternative service should be introduced by the end of next year. Currently, about 500 to 600 people every year object to mandatory military service, most of whom follow their religious beliefs that forbids them to bear arms. The court's decision is accepted as a meaningful step toward constitutional rights, especially by the lawyers and activists in liberal circles. But the decision is not welcomed by all Koreans. Opponents to the concept of conscientious objections say that under the current hostile environment where we are still at war with North Korea, acknowledging conscientious objectors would jeopardize national security. They also argue that non-religious draft dodgers may abuse the law to evade military service. Opponents say that nothing can replace the sacrifices made by active military personnel who put their lives on the line. As the difference of opinions about conscientious objection has been strong, so the making of an alternative military service a law is not expected to be an easy task. The difficult task of upholding the basic rights of citizens and making draftees feel proud of their time in the military is now in the hands of the government, the National Assembly, and Korean citizens. The court supported its decision to protect religious rights in Korea when it upheld alternative service for conscientious objectors. There's a lot of advanced vocabulary here. First, I want to talk about alternative service. So when we talk about that, we mean, if all Korean men must register with the military and serve in the military. But alternative service for conscientious objectors are people who will not fight or kill or even touch a weapon. So we have to find another way. So that's alternative service. So that can mean areas of healthcare, areas of construction. Doing something that is not military related would be an alternative service, something else. Individual rights in the Korean Constitution were upheld in the recent court ruling. Conscientious objectors will not serve jail time, but will have to serve some sort of alternative military service. So colloquially, we say serve jail time. We have to distinguish between jail, prison, and even military prison. So if you commit a crime in America, jail is under 1 year of service. So 6 months, that's jail. But for something serious over 1 year, that's going to prison. And then if you break a law for the military, you have to go to a military prison, also known as the brig. So I understand the punishment in Korea for not going to the military is about 3 years. That's prison time. That's pretty serious. But colloquially in conversation, we say jail time. If alternative military service will be more physically demanding and have longer terms, it can prevent draft dodging. So if the alternative military service is physically demanding, that means you have to be doing very tough work. Usually you're working outside, working with your hands, working in construction, digging ditches, or building something. That's something what's called physically demanding. And it can prevent draft dodging. So in the United States, we have the draft. Traditionally, we did have the draft, which is our version of mandatory military service. In Europe, they call it conscription. So if you are conscripted in the military, you are a conscript. And if you are drafted into the military, you are a draftee. However, draft dodging, to dodge means to move out of the way. Americans love alliteration, so it's a draft dodging, DD. Draft dodging is when you avoid the draft. Either you lie about it or you run away traditionally to Canada or another country and avoid the draft. So we call that draft dodging or to dodge the draft. In order to prevent abuse of the new law, longer time periods of alternative military service and arduous tasks need to be implemented. So arduous tasks. If something is arduous, it is very, very difficult, very hard to do, very annoying. So if these people do not go to the military, they should be doing something very difficult and very hard for a long time in order to supplement their military service. Even if conscientious objectors spend more time and do labor-intensive activities, it cannot equate to someone who sacrifices their life or health for their country. We talked before about the physically demanding. We said do labor-intensive activities. That means doing a lot of work, especially physical work, and that requires a lot of time. That's something that's very labor-intensive. And it cannot equate to someone who sacrifices their life. So it cannot equate to someone means you can't really compare the two. Someone who does a lot of work is not someone who is equal, who will sacrifice their life. That means to give their life or to die for their country. The ultimate sacrifice is to give one's life to their country. No amount of labor as alternative service can equal that of those who put their lives in danger. So I mentioned the ultimate sacrifice. It's kind of another way of saying dying for your country. A lot of times you'll hear about soldiers who gave the ultimate sacrifice. It's kind of a very nice way of, or an honorable way of saying that they died in service in the military for their country. Korea is still at war, and the decline in population will mean a lack of manpower entering the military. It is all hands on deck. This new law may be abused by young men claiming to be conscientious objectors. So before I mentioned, it's all hands on deck. This comes from what we call nautical English. England used to rule the world via its navy, and mostly every man served. So we have a lot of expressions that relate to being on a ship. So on a ship, when you say all hands on deck, that means everyone must report to the top of the boat in case of an emergency or where we need everyone working. So in case of a battle on a ship or there's a storm, you need all hands on deck. But we use all hands on deck right now, meaning everyone must participate. So if you have an all hands on deck meeting at your company, that means everyone must go. Everyone must participate. So that's what we say now, all hands on deck. Korea's impending population crisis and its constant state of alert still require a large military presence in the area. Allowing more people to avoid mandatory military service will put the country at risk. So I mentioned Korea's impending population crisis. Impending means it's coming soon. And population crisis, as a lot of people do know, there's a very fast aging population and a very low birth rate. That is a population crisis because the younger people will not be able to support the older people as they age. And then Korea is also in a constant state of alert. Alert state or alert status means Korea is constantly ready for war. So if there is ever peacetime in the future, that state of alert will be reduced. But a state of alert means a state of readiness for war or danger. Due to an increase in military technology and tactics, less and less troops are needed for an effective fighting force. As there are such a small percentage of conscientious objectors, it would not make a dent in military effectiveness. So effective fighting force means a military size that could beat your enemy, and that could win in a potential battle and win in a quick manner or fashion. And then I said the amount of conscientious objectors would not make a dent in military effectiveness. To make a dent in something means to have an effect. So imagine you go to the ocean and you have a coffee mug and you're like, I'm gonna get all the water out of the ocean. So you take a cup of water and you start pouring it on the land and you take more and more and more. You will never make a dent in that ocean because that amount of effort or that small amount of water will have no effect on the ocean. Also, let's say we have a pizza. I would say, can you help me make a dent in this? Means, can you help me eat this so we can make it smaller, so we can take it home? So to make a dent is to have an effect. Can't make a dent, no effect. With over 600,000 active military personnel, a few hundred conscientious objectors will not make a difference in a conflict. As time goes on and relationships improve with North Korea, less troops will be needed to defend South Korea. Thanks again, guys. Thanks for downloading. Bye-bye.